Today I'm going to share with you the exact 5 habits and routine that has kept me lean, energized, and performing at my best for over 10 years now. And it's not from following a specific diet. I've done it all, my friend. Carnivore, keto, low carb, high carb. I've struggled with binge eating, and I've been through and battled with a lot of the things that you struggle with. And also, it's not from following a magic workout plan or a bunch of magic workouts. It's actually from cementing in a routine and making that part of my lifestyle to the point where it feels easy to be lean, muscular, energized, on top form pretty much all year round. So let's start with habit number 1, nutrition. I want to start with nutrition. So I'm going to go into depth here. I'm going to run through what I ate in a day and everything now, right? But the number one thing here is if you can avoid forget what anyone else says. If anyone else tells you different to this, right, they are full of BS. Now, someone might say carnivore, follow carnivore. That's the best thing to do. And you know what? If you follow that perfectly, it'll be great. Why? Because you avoid an ultra-processed food. Same goes with keto if you do it properly. Even if you do a high-carb diet where it's all single ingredient carbohydrates, right? Whole food, the whole food diet. In other words, avoid ultra-processed foods. Why? Because they make you want to eat more of them. You'll never win the battle. You'll lie to yourself and you'll say, I'll have some of these foods here and there. But actually, like I said on the last episode, the calories are not accurate anyway. So you're eating more calories than what you anticipate when you're eating those foods. And also, they'll always win the battle. They'll make you overeat. I like to compare this to almost like social media. Social media is a diet. We consume it. It goes into our brain, and ultimately it changes the way we think if we're spending a lot of time on there scrolling and stuff, right? It becomes an addiction, right? You're scrolling from one to the next, to the next, to the next. The average person spends 2.5 hours on there. That's a good analogy for diet and processed foods. Once you open those Pringles, once you open those Oreos, right? Those foods are not designed to be moderated, right? So trust me, I've coached hundreds of people. I've been on my own journey. I've overcome the binge eating disorder. I'm in the shape of my life all year round now, not from following a diet, but from avoiding those foods as much as possible. I very rarely eat them. 99 or 95% of my diet is single ingredient foods. The other 5% might be the dark chocolate, the yogurt, but that's not ultra processed, right? Really. And they don't make me overeat. So let me run through my day, right? What I eat in a day. Firstly, obviously, I get up in the morning and I hydrate, right? I'm not going to go deep into that, but that's obvious. Forget about all the food stuff. If you're not hydrating and you're not actually hydrating properly by having an adequate amount of salt and sodium or electrolytes, which is even better, then you are going to be on the back foot. Forget about food, right? So I get up in the morning, I have a liter of water, basically within the first kind of 10, 15 minutes of waking. I get up, have a pee, have a liter of water, mix it with electrolytes. I use electrolytes and creatine, boom. So what I'll do is I'll either have just water straight. If I'm going to the gym, I'll just have water without the salt, and then I'll put the electrolytes into my 1.5 stainless steel bottle. Obviously, we want to avoid plastics, and I'll take that to the gym. So I'll drink that 1.5 liters in the gym on top of the 1 liter of plain water I've drank just before. So on the days I don't train, I'll just do the elements straight away. Oh, I've just said the electrolytes now, haven't I? I'll do that straight away, and I'll just have like a liter of it upon waking, right? Now, you lose about 500 to 750 mils in your sleep, right? So, and it's not about just drinking water. It's about getting it into the tissues, getting it into the cells. You need the right balance of sodium and potassium in particular to do that. Now, you can just use good old-fashioned salt and lemon. It doesn't have to be expensive electrolytes. Half a lemon squeezed with maybe a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, boom, mix that into your water. So that's what I do, boom. Then I move on to, I don't eat. So I'll either go to the gym or I'll go for a walk. Sometimes I'll just get straight to work. And generally I'll wait about, no, I don't wait. Actually, I don't really wait much most days now for caffeine, which can help with energy because obviously your cortisol levels are through the roof essentially when you wake up. So if you don't hydrate before caffeine, if you can do that one thing and hydrate before you have coffee, it's a game changer. I can't even tell you how many clients, right, they've gone, man, this is the ultimate habit you've told me to do, is by having electrolytes and water before you have the coffee, right? Not just getting up and having coffee first. If you do, your adrenal system is essentially an overdrive when you wake up. So when you have caffeine, you might hydrate a little bit, right? Don't get me wrong. Like people say caffeine dehydrates you. It doesn't really. If you're having it with water, you're still hydrating a bit. But that coffee and that caffeine is going to fire up that adrenal system, cortisol, stress hormones straight away when they're already elevated. You want to let your body flush the cortisol levels, bring them down naturally itself. And you want it to actually fire up by itself, your system. And it'll do that from replenishing water to start with, right? You wake up a little bit dehydrated. So that's what I do first. Let's get into the food. I'll fast in the morning. And what I'll then do is I'll train, I'll have a train, or I'll go for a walk, I'll have my black coffee. So technically you might say I'm not in a fast, right? But I'm having my black coffee and I'll either get work done, like I said, or I'll go train, I'll go for a walk or whatever. And I'll generally break my fast at around about midday. But like I said before, what I do is I'll break that fast sometimes with dark chocolate. That is my vice, ladies and gents, right? 90% give or take dark chocolate. Pretty much 5 times a week I'll have that, maybe 4 times, 5 times. So I'll sometimes have that at maybe 10 a.m., right, with some coffee. And obviously dark chocolate's got stimulants in it like caffeine and theobrine, I think it's called, right? So don't forget about that. So that'll keep me stimulated, keep me pushing through a work task. I'm fully aware I don't need that dark chocolate, right? The one I have is clean, so it's not classed as ultra processed because it's got natural ingredients in it. But it's not something that I need, right? You can talk about the polyphenols, antioxidants. There is some benefits to having it, but I'll be honest with you, I just have that because I enjoy eating it, right? I love the taste of it, and it gives me a bit of stimulation for work. I look at it like caffeine as productivity. So anyway, I'll have my coffee 30 minutes after waking normally. Sometimes I'll wait that 90 minutes, which is best. If you can wait 90 minutes after waking, hydrate first. There's actually research on it now to show providing you've had good sleep, it can help with the afternoon crash. It can give you more sustained energy. It can actually just help all in all with your energy levels and a few other things there, right? So I'll do that sometimes, but let's get into the food. So when I break the fast, I'll generally break the fast with red meat. So I'll have most of the meat I have, I'd say about 80% of it is grass-fed beef. And the first meal, look, the reason I don't like just saying this is what I eat in a day with that, like just showing you, I could show you on Instagram like I show some people. It's actually not helpful. You think it's helpful, me showing you what I eat, but what I eat, essentially, how is that helpful to you when the reality is I can eat way more calories than you for a start. And also, so if you eat what I eat, most of you are going to actually gain fat, right? Whereas I'll lose fat eating 3,000 calories, right? Which I'll get to. So I want to break this down because it's the nutrients and also the different energy systems that you can use and tap into when it comes to productivity. So on that note, my first meal, generally, I'm probably dipping in and out of ketosis anyway, because I'm in I don't eat for, on average, about 18 hours a day, unless I break it with the dark chocolate, 16 to 18 hours, right? Because I'll either have, say, dark chocolate, let's just say for argument's sake, 10 a.m., or I'll eat a meal at midday, right? So, and then I'll have my last meal. I finish that at like 5:30, to be honest. So let's just say 16 to 18 hour window where I'm not eating other than black coffee. And then so I'm probably dipping into ketosis. I notice my energy levels are higher, but be mindful of that as well, because that can be a trap, right? That can be a real trap in terms of you feeling like you've got loads of energy throughout the day, but only eating one meal a day and having loads of coffee. Actually, your stress hormones are just through the roof. And for most people, that's not good. And I'm going to share with you a mistake I made this week as well. I'll just get into that now, right? So normally I'll have 2 meals a day, but this week I had 1 meal. So my first meal will be grass-fed beef, and every other day I'll have eggs. On training days, I like to have eggs. So on the non-training day at the moment, I'll have first meal, it'll be grass-fed beef. It'll be some eggs normally, fried in ghee oil. Then I'll normally add some avocado, right? And have dark chocolate sometimes before that, or maybe even after that, right? So that's even the dark chocolate is like 90%, so it's low in sugar. So that's mainly protein and fats. And that meal will keep me full most of the day because I'm having so much protein, number one. In that first meal, I'm having anywhere between like 150 to 200 grams of protein. Do you understand that most people struggle to eat that in a day over 3 meals? I can easily do that in my first meal. What does 150 grams of protein look like? It looks like even having, say, 650 grams, for example, of beef. That's about 150 grams of protein. If I was to have 4 eggs on top of that, let's say, or 5 eggs like I had yesterday, in an egg, it's only 6 grams of protein. Let's say I have 5 eggs, that's 30 grams of protein. So what's that? 180 grams of protein in one meal if I was to have just that 650 grams of steak, which is a lot of steak, by the way, way more than the average person eats in one meal, a lot more, double minimum. And then the 5 eggs, right? So number one, that's going to keep me satiated because of the protein. And then on top of that, I'm going to get extra fullness from having the fats as well, because of all the fats I'm having. Essential fats, saturated fats primarily, actually, some omega-3s and stuff from the grass-fed beef and also from the eggs, which are going to help keep me satiated as well on top of that. Not to mention fats for brain, function, cognitive function, energy, hormone health. Avocado is the only fruit which is like 80% fat. There's hardly any sugar in it. So if I have that on top, that's going to keep me satiated as well. So bear in mind, though, if I was to have that amount of steak, or even if I had 500 grams of steak, eggs, and avocado, it's a lot of calories, my friend. You're looking at like 1,500 to 2,000 calories in meal one. Again, most people, they can't eat more than 2,000 calories in a day without gaining fat. I can do that in one meal. Why? Because I've built so much muscle over the years. I've got a lot of muscle on my body, which costs my body a lot of calories. And I also do a lot of activity, right? So I move a lot. And I eat really high protein, which has a high thermic effect. Remember, for every, say, 80 calories of protein you eat, 100 calories of protein you eat, you only actually absorb and assimilate the calories, about 80% of the calories. So 20% of the calories, give or take, 20 to 30% of the calories that you consume through protein-rich foods like meat and eggs and fish, for example, or even whey protein, or even, Greek yogurt or whatever, you're actually gonna burn 20 to 30% of that whilst consuming it, because the thermic effect. Your body has to burn. It costs your body, basically, to digest protein is going to cost your body calories. So that's the first meal, give or take. And that first meal on a non-training day, generally this is, will then keep me satiated for at least 5 or 6 hours. So let's say I have that at midday. The next meal I'm eating at about 5:30. In between that, I don't eat anything. I might have a decaf long black, right? And that's pretty much it, really. So that's habit number one, essentially, is eating whole foods. And I haven't finished this habit. Let me just finish this what I eat in the evening. Sorry, I had a bit too much caffeine this morning, ladies and gents. So bear with me. So the next meal then is where I'll throw the carbs in, right? So I've talked about this before, but this is going to be in the habit too, right? I'm going to get to. It's some of the stuff I'm going to go into detail on. But the last meal is mainly going to be just yogurt and fruit. And just this week, I've started cutting out the whey protein that I'm mixing with the yogurt, because number one, it's addictive. Right, it's super addictive. When you get whey protein, have a look what's in it. A lot of times it's artificial sweeteners, which get people even more addicted. This is not artificial, but just because it's got stevia, right, which is a natural sweetener, right? But how much do they put of the natural sweetener in there? They don't really have to say that on the tub, right? And it just, whatever they've done, it tastes amazing. There's only 3 ingredients in it, and it messes up my gut, whey protein. So I've started cutting that out and just having my my normal whole organic yogurt. It's actually not Greek yogurt, this one. And Greek yogurt is better than actually having, for most people, it's better than having just normal organic yogurt, because it actually contains more more protein in Greek yogurt. This one contains say 5 grams of protein. That's all per 100 grams. Whereas Greek yogurt is generally going to be like 8 to 10 grams of protein per 100 grams of yogurt, which means it's easier for people to hit their protein target, right? But for me, I've already hit that with my first meal pretty much, right? So the reason I have this is because I enjoy this meal now, right? You can't really call it a meal. If you don't want to call it a meal, that's fine. But it's yogurt, berries. For example, this week, the second meal was literally just yogurt. A lot of it, though, about 500 grams on average, which is like 400 calories or over 400 calories, because it's full fat yogurt. It's not low fat. And also then I've been having precisely, because I've just started tracking again, which I'll get to in habit 2. I've been having 225 grams of berries to 300 grams. I've started having pineapple, which, by the way, I only just realized is super low in calories. I know it's kind of high in sugar, but it's super low in calories, good for digestion, contains a lot of micronutrients. So I've started having frozen blueberries, which I always have, and I've started having frozen pineapple. And then I like to buy a couple of bananas ripe and then put them in the freezer and have them frozen in a bowl with my yogurts, and 20 grams of honey. You might say that's a lot of sugar, ladies and gents, but you know what? It's actually coming from fruits, and there's obviously fiber in it as well. And I'm not just eating the fruit and the honey by itself. I'm having it with protein and fat from the yogurt, precisely around about 25 grams of protein from the yogurt, if I have 500 grams of it, and also the fats as well. Again, the difference in the spike in blood sugar and to how hungry you feel afterwards is night and day difference in terms of what you eat the fruit or even the honey with, right? So that's my second meal at the moment in the evening. So I'm getting a lot of nourishment from that. I'm getting a lot of, look, when you look at dairy or whole milk, which this yogurt is derived from, and you look at grass-fed beef, those two foods are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. Now, beef liver is number one, but the problem with beef liver, if you just ate that by itself, there's a lot of copper in it, right? And that can be a problem. And also even vitamin A, I don't know if you know that. Vitamin A, you can actually have too much of that, way too much of it from having beef liver, because it contains so much of it, right? It's so nutrient dense. Has about 10 times the amount of B12 than red meat. So if I just had whole milk and grass-fed beef for the rest of my life, I likely wouldn't get a nutrient deficiency, right? That's how they've got pretty much everything you need in it. Essential proteins, essential fats, minerals, and even some vitamins as well, right? So that's it, and I'm good then. So then I'm satiated and I'm good to go. Now, sometimes that last meal, I might have a bit less meat with meal one, and that last meal will be like meat and white rice. But that's on a non-training day. On a training day, then I've started having white rice with the meal. Like yesterday, for example, I had white rice, steak, and eggs, right? With a little bit of olive oil, actually, with that first meal after training to replenish and aid recovery, right? And there's loads of research on that with carbohydrates. They can really help actually with the recovery the next day in the gym. They increase recovery the next day by 30% if you have carbs straight after training, right? I'm not saying that's going to work for everyone, but that's what's been working for me. So naturally, I'm carb cycling as well, right? So look, point one is essentially eating whole foods, right? That's point one. I avoid, you didn't see any ultra-processed foods in there, right? I avoid ultra-processed foods. The dark chocolate that I have doesn't make me overeat. It's 90% minimum. If you do have dark chocolate, you want to have at least 85%. Otherwise, there's a lot of sugar in there. And you want to look at the ingredients, right? And anything you buy. And can you pronounce the ingredients? Is it like, for example, the dark chocolate that I have is they've got cane sugar in there, right? Organic cane sugar. They've got like 3 or 4 ingredients in there. Obviously, cacao. Can't remember the other 2, right? But when it just says sugar, that's going to be refined sugar. Just be aware of it. But look, if you hit protein and you have mainly whole foods, don't be too restrictive either. If you have some of the ultra-processed foods and it's just a small amount and you don't find yourself overeating and you're getting great results and you're in amazing shape all year round and you can stay lean, fantastic, great. But most of you are not there, let's be honest, right? So you want to make sure that you're monitoring these things in terms of the quality of food you're eating, how much protein you're having. And again, what works for me is not necessarily going to work for you. So that's habit one, eating mainly whole foods. And even when I have carbs, I don't restrict carbs too much, because I notice when I have carbs, I sleep better, I recover faster from training, and I don't feel restricted as much, right? I just feel better. And having white rice is easy on my digestive system. I don't have any gut issues. And obviously, when I'm having fruit as well, I'm getting a bunch of micronutrients, right? If you look at blueberries within themselves, they're a superfood, right? Especially with the antioxidants and stuff. So that's basically habit one. So habit two is intermittent tracking, right? So this is something I really want to touch on, is food tracking. So this week, let me get into a mistake that I've made this week. So I started tracking food, and the reason I've done that is because I wanted to kind of shine a light basically on where I'm at. And I actually want to get a bit leaner. I'm not going to lie. I've got a little tiny bit more body fat than I usually have. And I like to do intermittent tracking as habit. This is habit two, because tracking should not be something that you do all year round. Unless you're really new to it, there's a lot of value to it. Don't get me wrong. Some of my clients, they love to track all year round. They just do it because it keeps them accountable and it keeps them aware. But it should never be a destination. The majority of my clients, I always say to them, this is not something you want to do forever, right? You want to get to a point where you can eat automatic and it's intuitive. You make automatic decisions with food and you don't have to get an app out and weigh and track your food, right? But it can really help you make better decisions with food, eat less, and get more awareness. So the mistake I made this week is having one meal in a day. So I haven't done that for a while. I used to do it. Now, if I got used to it, I might be okay doing it, right? Throwing it in as a curveball. But what I start doing, in my case, is because I love what I do. I love serving clients. I love creating content, creating podcasts, my email. I love doing it all, but it's a lot of work, right? And I can get sucked into that too much to the point where I'm like, right, I'll just have that one meal today because I can get more work done, which does serve a purpose if I could do it every now and then. But then I always take things a bit too far. So not only was I doing the one meal, but I still had my dark chocolate. Then I had some bone broth, right? Just this stuff that I use as two kind of snacks, and I don't normally snack. Then I had the one meal. And what I did then is I loaded up too much in that one meal, and I noticed that my digestion was terrible. I had bloating and stuff, actually, from having too much in that one meal. And I'll tell you the truth, I never eat potato because it bloats me. What I actually did in that one meal, and what I've noticed as well, even white rice, and this is why you've got to be aware, it's different from person to person, but I see this with clients as well. The combinations of food can make a massive difference because of the speed of digestion on some foods. For example, I had a meal where I had white potatoes, skinless. I never eat potato. Sometimes I'm okay with it, but a lot of people I find like it's 50-50. Like half of my clients do well eating potatoes, and that's great because it's actually the best starchy carb you can eat, potatoes, because it keeps you really satiated, high in fiber, potassium, those kind of things, especially sweet potato. But most 50% of people, I'd say clients that I've coached, or maybe 40%, they have issues with digestion with things like potatoes and some plants, and I'm the same. So anyway, I had potato with this one meal and a little bit of white rice, and I had it all in one meal. I had my meats, then I had a bit of yogurt and fruit afterwards, and I felt bloated and terrible afterwards. And not only that, my stress levels were way higher, and I track it using my Oura Ring, and I just didn't feel as good. So that was a mistake I made from actually getting back to tracking. I started trying to cut back too much and go into extremes, thinking, right, if I have this one meal, one, I can get more work done. Two, I'll eat less, right? Which is true with eating less part, but it didn't serve me too well. So tracking though, right? I track as intermittent tracking, I like to call it, because I probably track, I don't know, only for about 2 months of the year I'll track when I'm looking to get leaner and tighten up. And more important than getting lean, I want to fix my gut, right? I'm getting some intermittent gut issues, and when I track, I eat less. And then when I put myself into a deficit, then it's less stress on my gut. And then I start really being more aware of how foods make me feel when I'm tracking as well. So doing that really, really helps me stay lean, definitely, and get leaner and do mini cuts. But also it helps me be more aware. And this is why with clients, I like most of them to track at some point, even if it's just for 2 to 4 weeks at the start of the program, because then they actually go, do you know what? I didn't realize how little protein I was having, for example. They just weren't aware. And for me, it's actually the opposite. I realized I was having way more protein than what I needed this week, meat and calories. So having like, a kilo of meat versus I only really need about, 700 grams over the day if I have my Greek yogurt to hit like, 250 grams of protein. Whereas before I'm having like 300 grams and I'm having extra. And it's not like people always talk about like protein and gluconeogenesis and then protein converts to fat. It's BS. Like protein's the last macronutrient that converts into fat. Fat being number two. Fat being number one, actually, that converts fastest into fat. And carbohydrates being number two. But that's if you're in a little bit of a calorie surplus, right? So that's the most important thing. Calorie deficit to lose weight. Calorie surplus, you gain weight. So all that to say, it makes a big difference, right? So tracking, where was I going with that then? I lost my trail of thought. So the combinations of food, right? So when I was tracking, having the fats and having the carbs, I forgot where I was going to go with that now. I lost my trail of thought. Definitely too much caffeine today, ladies and gents. Help me out here. I know you're screaming at me going, I know where you were going with this. But intermittent tracking anyway. So tracking, I made the mistake, having one meal and then being too extreme. I was having too much protein. That's where I was going. And fat and calories. So the calories comes from the fat. I was having more protein than I needed, which is, I don't really need to have more than I need necessarily, it's not necessarily going to be a bad thing if you go over on protein, as long as you don't get any digestive issues. But it's because I'm having the extra meat. It's the fat that I am having from the meat. Because I have full fat beef mince. Well, sometimes I have lean, actually half and half. But even just having from Scotch fillet steaks, which I eat, it's extra calories that I don't need. And was that maybe stressing my gut more because I'm having excess fat and calories, right? And then also just eating more than I needed. So I cut the meat down in my case and the protein down, whereas most people need to ramp it up. So without tracking, even though I tracked for like 6 years on and off, I'm still off. So even when I go back to tracking, I'm still having like 500 calories more than what I thought I was having each day, every single time. 400, 500, maybe 300 to 500 calories more I was eating than I thought I was in my head. I was having about 50 to even 100 grams more protein than I thought I was having, which is a weird one, right? Because people think they're having more protein. I was actually eating, they think they're having more, but they're having less. Whereas for me, I thought I was having like, 250 grams, but I was having, 300 grams of protein. So it shined the light on that, right? So that's habit number 2 is using tracking as a tool. You'll eat 20 to 30% less. The research is clear on this. The same goes if you track your steps, right? You don't know how many steps you do, and you start tracking. You go, oh wow, I'm only doing 2,000 steps. I want to get 5,000, 6,000. You know what I mean? And then you start moving more because what you can see, you can actually improve, right? If you can't see, you can't improve because you have no idea. So that's number 2, right? And it's a great tool to use. So what I also wanted to give you as well is I want to give you, I've created a new metabolic quiz now, which is way quicker than the last one. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes, and it'll give you a metabolic score and a specific plan for your body type. So if you're looking to lose fat, build muscle, or both, you get a score and a plan specific for your body and for the results you want to get, right? It's insane value. So get that. I'm going to give it to you for free. Click the link in the show notes. And once you've got that as well, you'll automatically get sent my brand new muscle building fat loss program, right? You'll get sent that once you fill that out. But more importantly, you're going to get a specific plan for your body type, exactly what to eat with food, exactly what training to do to maximize fat loss, muscle gain, or both if you want both, right? Depends on what you want. So click the link beneath in the show notes to get that. So point number 3 is training, strength training. So this habit keeps me lean, muscular, and energized all year round. Not because necessarily I'm doing it consistently. Yeah, that's number 1. Over the last, if we talk of just 10 years, I've trained consistently, lifted weights for 20 years now, right? I'm 38, started lifting when I was 17, just over 20 years. But it's the way I do it and the methods that I use which actually get me better results for less time. And this is what I look at with clients, right? I look at, okay, let's have a look at where you're at. How can we elicit maximum change with your body and results for the minimum amount of time? Because it's not about necessarily less effort, less time, let's do 10-minute workouts. It's not about that, because there comes a point where you've got to add volume, you've got to do more. It's about people cross the line with intensity. They don't train smart. Number 1, most people are all or nothing. And I used to be this person, by the way. I always trained, but I used to overdo it with training. So they either do too much, they're consistent for short periods of time, and then they sabotage and they can't keep it going because they're going too hard with training. It's not sustainable. And actually you get terrible results because there's only so much stress your body can take with training on top of normal stress life. Or number 2, they train consistently, but they're not doing it smart. They need to do it better. They need to scale back volume per session a lot of the times, per workout, rather than doing an hour on one body part, for example. 80 to 90% of people will do better doing 20 minutes on that body part on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example, spread the volume out, than they would blasting all that in one session. And this is what I do now. I talk about band sessions, and this is a signature part of the OYB program, is doing these basically light pump up sessions on the days in between training. Not all clients do it, to be honest. I've probably got about 30-40% of clients doing it now. But it keeps you in shape, it keeps you energized, it keeps your metabolism firing just by doing something. It doesn't have to be bands. It can be body weights. It can be, even if you've got some dumbbells at home, it can be a light 15-minute little pump up right on the days in between. And you could even do 2 of those with bands. You could do 2 10-minute ones, for example. And it sends that muscle building signal. So this is habit number 3, right? I'll just run through what I do. So I told you last time we spoke, I think I was doing 2 experiment where I was doing 2 gym sessions per week, full body. The reason why 80-90% of people get better results doing full body is because, going back to what I said, they're doing less per body part per session, but they're hitting every body part. For example, if you do 3 full bodies or even 2, you're hitting every body part 2 to 3 times in a week. And how frequently you train each given muscle group and just how frequently you do strength training is actually the most important thing when it comes to results. But if you're doing it frequently with too much intensity and you go into failure and you're not recovering properly, that'll get you negative results. So you see how much nuance there is, my friend, when it comes to training. I know my body. I know my clients' bodies. So I know exactly what they need to do specifically. And ChatGPT and AI isn't going to give you that. Unless it literally coaches you, right, and it watches what you're doing in real time, it's not going to be able to do it. And also, and don't get me wrong, you get great programs and stuff. I'm not talking down on ChatGPT. You can get pretty much everything you need resource-wise. But when it comes to body type and actually stress, life stress, and how much, because there's 2 different things, right, which I've learned and which science shows. Adaptation and recovery, they're not the same thing with strength training. You want your body to adapt to any given training stimulus. What does that look like? You get stronger and you build muscle. So, for example, this is what I like to do with clients, rather than changing the workouts and the training sessions every single day because people get bored. Like, you're going to hold yourself back, my friend. If you want to do the work, it's not always about doing what you love doing, right? It's not, I love this F40. If I love CrossFit, that's great. I'm all for it. If you enjoy doing it and you're happy doing it, you feel like you're staying consistent and you don't really care about getting to the next level with your body and your metabolic health and like maybe just getting to that next level. That's totally fine because not everyone wants that anyway. People say they want to get to the next level with their body and stay lean year round, build more muscle, be in next level shape. Let's just say how it is, physically and mentally. But they don't actually want it because they don't want to put the work in to do that, right? They don't want to change what they're doing. They're chasing a feeling of training, right? In other words, spending their time in the recovery trap, going back to what I was saying with recovery and adaptation. They're basically stuck in that recovery trap because they're training too much, not allowing their body to recover, even when they don't realize it. It's not just about being, I'm sore, so I train too much. No, it's your nervous system that's recovering. It's not always about muscle soreness. If you notice your energy levels are lower, maybe your sleep's getting interrupted, you're not building muscle. You could be stuck in that recovery trap. So you want your body to adapt. You want it to adapt to a stimulus, but not too much. Goes back to the nuance, right? If you adapt too much, you get diminishing results, which is why for any given training phase, let's just say anywhere from about 3 to 5 weeks, right? Let's just say you're doing full body, 3 different full body sessions, focusing on one thing. And that's what I'll do. So for 4 weeks, for example, this is what I did over the last 4 weeks. I did the minimum training I've done in years. I wanted to experiment doing 2 full body sessions. I was lifting heavy, low rep range and trying to get stronger. I still build muscle, by the way, when you do lower reps. And then on the 5 days in between each week, I was doing resistance bands where I was doing 15 minutes full body pump, not intense. And I still managed to look pretty much the same. I retained muscle nice. I actually got much stronger. In fact, I noticed my strength went up more, probably because I was allowing myself to recover. But also those band sessions, because you can't go overboard with the bands, they actually aid recovery. So they help you adapt faster because they speed up recovery, which is a good thing. So I was doing those things. Now I've ramped that up to 3 to 4 times a week. What I did notice, my friend, right, just to share with you, is like mental health. I need more than 2 gym sessions a week. It wasn't cutting it, mental health wise. And also for me, because I coach clients online, I do it on Zoom. I do the community group calls as well on Zoom. Most of the stuff I do is on a computer, right? That's the reality of it. So I need to be around people. And that's one thing you got to realize. When I go to the gym, it's all those subtle things that you need, even if it's subconscious. It's just being around people, right? I'm around people when I walk around. When I'm in the gym, I'm around people. It's therapy. I've got an hour to myself where I'm not distracted. So it's those things that you get from training, which is not just like getting results physically. So strength training consistently is number 3 and doing it the smart way, all right? So number 4 is sleep. Now you may be able to see on the YouTube, you can see the black on my mattress behind me. Now that's my 8 Sleep mattress cover, right? And I'm not sponsored by these. I should be. The amount of times I shout them out. This is how much I pay attention to sleep. I got the Oura Ring, I got the 8 Sleep, and what gets measured can get managed again. For me, when I started tracking my sleep about 5 years ago, started off using the Whoop, then I switched to the Oura. That took my whole health, energy, everything to the next level, because I started noticing that actually you think you're sleeping for 8 hours, but you don't realize that you wake up without even noticing. You're kind of half asleep, you don't notice. So I was actually waking up for like almost an hour without realizing it. So I thought I was getting 8 hours. I was actually just about getting 7. So I started thinking, wow, I have to go to bed a bit earlier to get more sleep, was number 1. But number 2 is the bedtime routine I always talk about. So this 4th habit, and by the way, all these habits I like to say, I've stacked them on over time, like over the last 10 to 15 years, say 10 years. I've slowly stacked them on one after another. Like I said, 5 years, the sleep thing, I leveled up 5 years ago. Wish I'd done that 20 years ago. But I did that. And also, so the 8 Sleep, by the way, that also tracks the sleep, but that keeps the mattress at the right temperature, right? So it adapts, uses AI. And like last night, for example, it made 35 adjustments to the temperature of the mattress, and on 2 sides of the mat. Should be sponsored by this company. Like, I'm not shouting them out. I'm just telling you it works. For 2 sides of it's expensive, mind. 2 sides of the mattress, my girlfriend's side, for example, she has her own app. It regulates each side of the mattress. So her temperature, what her body temperature is, like women generally, they sleep hotter, right? Men, we get hotter, so we need a cooler mattress. For example, it basically made 35 adjustments, I think it was. And the average temperature for me is around about -3. It cools the mattress to. My girlfriend is like, I think it's 0 to -1, hers, but it automatically adjusts. But you have to pay extra for that on top of the thing. So it's like I say, it's not cheap, but for me, it's a good investment. So the temperature of the room is number 1, right? You have to have a cool room. You don't necessarily, obviously that's going to help, but you just have to have the room with the right temperature. If you're in a warm room, even if you're like a tiny bit too hot, that'll disrupt sleep, even if you're not aware of it. A dark room, obviously I wear an eye mask. Get blackout blinds if you can. But more importantly, also the other thing then is regularity, right? Go into bed at a quiet room as well. Obviously, you have to have a quiet room, but go into bed at roughly the same time. This is the most important thing. This is something I'm always working on. This is the number one thing, is circadian rhythm, regularity. So social jet lag is a real thing. If you're awake longer on the weekend, you're going to start your week feeling tired. And, even 15 minutes to 30 minutes, you can kind of get away with going to bed at, like, let's say you go to bed at 10, go to bed at 10:30 p.m. Outside of that, it's a bit of a problem, to be honest, right? Now, you have to have a life as well, but just being aware of these things really, really helps. So I go to bed at roughly the same time. But number one thing, right, when it comes to the discipline and the habit, is having a bedtime routine. It's the hardest thing. I have the biggest challenge with clients with this, because this thing here, right? Oh, look at that. I got my app open there. YouTube. My own video. So basically this thing here is going to keep you awake, the blue light. If you're looking at that, it's addictive. And I've mentioned this many times before. Cortisol, it's going to keep your cortisol levels elevated and your melatonin levels down. You want to bring the melatonin up and the cortisol down before bed. So I come away from that at least 60 to 90 minutes before bedtime. And that's been a game-changing habit for me, right? So the bedtime routine is everything. I read before bed. Sometimes I watch TV to wind down. That's still blue light, and it's not ideal at all, right? Because it's still blue light. It's not quite as bad as staring at your laptop and your phone. That emits more blue light. But you don't want to be looking at screens ideally. So about 90% of the time, I'll read before bed. The other 10%, I'll just watch something to wind down before bed, right? So that bedtime routine is everything. And obviously caffeine as well. So I cut caffeine off at least, personally, I try to cut it off at least 12 hours before sleep. Research shows 10 to 13 hours for the average person. It's in your system for 10 to 13 hours, depending on how much you have. So I cut that off at the latest by midday, but 90% of the time I cut it off by about 10:30 normally. I go to sleep at 10 p.m. So I would say, as a rule, if you can cut it off at least 8 to 10 hours before bed or midday, to play it safe, because it does disrupt REM sleep, deep sleep mainly actually, but that caffeine's in your system for a long time, right? And alcohol as well. I'll tie that into the sleep thing. I barely drink anymore. That's the worst thing for sleep, right? Literally alcohol. I barely drink anymore, right? To tie that in there. So finally, habit number 5, last but not least, is obviously movement. I walk after eating. This is a game-changing habit. If you can walk after eating, it literally is so powerful in terms of how it regulates your blood sugar levels that actually it could reverse type 2 diabetes in a lot of cases. They did a recent study on it. Even 10 minutes of walking afterwards is game changer for balancing out blood sugar levels and regulating them. Completely changes the game. And not to mention as well, it will help you feel satiated, right? Because you get the signal then to say you're full. But for me, that's how I get my steps in. I walk after my 2 big meals. And that's how I average about 12K steps 12,000 steps a day. So movement and walking after eating is a game-changing habit that I've stacked on, and regular movement. This is a big one, right? So now I'm at my stand-up desk. I rarely sit down, I stand up. So it's not always just about the amount of steps. It's about your NEAT, right? It's called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Is how much you're moving. Sitting down versus standing up. Which one's going to burn more calories? Which one's going to be better for you? Obviously standing up. Sitting is the new smoking. If you sit down for prolonged periods, they've compared it to smoking because it's going to take years off your life, sitting down for prolonged periods. So regular movement. I walk around. I intentionally move around the house. I intentionally, if I'm going to go on my phone to check emails or even put a post up on Instagram, for example, I'll pace up and down in my apartment to do that. So regular movement is everything, right? And this keeps me lean as a side effect because, look at your total daily energy expenditure, right? Let's look at, if we use percentages, right? 60 to 70% of your total calorie output is going to be your basal metabolic rate, right? Just to keep the lights on. So your brain, your organs, all that kind of stuff. Muscle is an organ, by the way, the biggest organ in the body. The more muscle you've got, the more your body burns naturally, automatically by itself. So 60, 70% is just by itself when you're sat on your ass, right? But the other 30%, out of the other 30%, about 15% of that is activity, right? So half of your day, essentially, right, is basically, half of your calorie output that you do manually each day is going to be from movement. Move as much as you can. Do regular movement. Stand up desk. Even a lot of clients have got one of those under the desks or just one of those it's not a treadmill. It's like a thing you can walk on. It's like a walker. There's a name for it. They're cheap as well. and it's been a game changer for them, not just for like steps. I did a study on one woman actually, and my clients have reported the same thing. Just a quick walk after they've eaten. They're just not hungry anymore. They got more energy. They actually did a study on this woman who walked for 5 minutes every hour, and like literally her blood sugar levels were like the best they've ever been, versus when she sat down all day. She was bordering, I can't remember how long the study was, but she was bordering, like basically insulin resistant by the end of it, pretty much, right? Night and day difference. Crazy, right? So it's the regular movement, and I don't do any cardio, right? This is not something that I'm going to say. I'm not anti-cardio, because actually doing cardio and exercise is obviously going to be good for everyone, right? But if you do too much of it, you factor cardio in. I've said this before, resistance training anyway. You're getting the cardio benefit when you do resistance training properly. But if you want top end VO2 max and you want to be like the fittest you can possibly be to like run a marathon or go and do like a high rocks or something like that, or like a CrossFit Games, that's different, right? You have to train specifically for it. But most of the it goes back to what I said, it's movement, it's zone 2. It's walking, brisk walk. That's zone 2. That's going to get your heart rate into that zone 2. Then there's the top end stuff, which, when I used to track my heart rate was going to that zone 4, zone 5, and more so from lifting heavy, believe it or not. Not from doing high reps, it would go up almost there when I do high reps. But when I do low reps and lifting heavy, my heart rate went up way higher. So probably explains why, because you're strengthening your heart. When you're building your muscles, you're also strengthening your heart, your cardiac muscle as well. But you're also doing that from cardio as well. So look, I'm just going to say I do no cardio. I just walk. I do resistance training, and I focus on diet, right? So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell, ladies and gents. And by the way, if anyone's been sitting on the fence and thinking about working with me one-to-one, then I'm actually going to be doing an offer right now, right? Where normally it's 90 days to sign up for my program, but it's going to be just 6 weeks. So it's half the commitment. So, over the next 6 weeks, you'll be able to drop around about anywhere between 3 to 5 kilos of fat, which works out, how much is that? I forget in pounds. That's probably around about 7 to 10 pounds of fat within the next 6 weeks. You're going to build lean muscle and get drastic strength gains, and also supercharge your energy. So yeah, big opportunity. If you can't commit to 6 weeks, then you can't commit to anything, right? If commitment's an issue for you and you're thinking, I haven't got the time, I haven't got this, that, and the other, or whatever it is, then, I can't really help you if you can't commit to 6 weeks, my friend, right? So anyway, that's what I'm offering right now. And if you want to apply, obviously I can't help everyone, but if we are a good fit, then we'll have a chat and we'll go from there and get you into the shape of your life. So just click the link beneath in the show notes if you want to apply to work with me for 6 weeks instead of signing up for 90 days. And yeah, all right, gonna leave it there, ladies and gents. Check out, if you're on YouTube, check out this recent video, which is related to this, and it'll give you a lot of value. All right, over and out.